After a couple of awesome days in Savannah, we are heading south again. If you can't tell by my new and improved outfit, the weather has changed drastically in the last 48 hours. We are now solidly in the 70s. I have shorts on. It's amazing. We are heading into the real parts of the Georgia ICW. A lot of people choose to skip this section. Last year we actually did a video on the Georgia ICW about whether or not it was worth it to stay inside. I will link to it up here. We really enjoy the Georgia ICW. It is one of the most beautiful sections of the ICW, and it is also one of the most challenging. But it is not impossible, and it is worth it. Today we're going from Thunderbolt to Kilkenny Creek, which is one of our favorite anchorages. It is about 32 statute miles or 26 nautical miles. And we really only have one traditional shoaling spot on this section, and that is Hellgate. Now you may remember Hellgate from our East River video. Anytime someone names a place Hellgate, it's usually not a good sign that things are going to be easy there. In this case, it is typically not a current situation like it is on the East River. It is a shoaling situation. But it was dredged in the summer of 2020, and the dredging has held up pretty well. The southern side of Hellgate is pretty shallow, so we are going to have to try to time it just a little bit. We are going to hit it about an hour after low tide, which the beauty of the tides in Georgia is that you get about a foot of water every 45 minutes. It's a little bit, that's a good estimate at least. So if you have rising water, you're golden. Even if you run aground, you're only gonna be there for 15, 20 minutes before you've got 4 or 5 inches of water to get you up off of it, which is great. So don't stress if you do run aground, because it's not gonna take very long to get off of it, unless you run aground on a falling tide. So it is a very good idea to know what direction the tide is going while you're traveling in Georgia. It's one of the few places you really gotta pay attention, because if you do run aground mid-tide falling here, you're not gonna have a good day. The other thing we have today is we do have one relatively open sound, but today's weather is absolutely gorgeous. We've got about 5 knots of wind, and it should not be a problem. We are going to have something a little bit more challenging tomorrow, but nothing too major. So because there are a lot of open sounds in Georgia, it's a great place to sail, but it also is a place where you do have to pay attention to the weather just a little bit more than you do in some of the other sections. We just went from 11 feet down to 7 feet. It was very fast. I can see water, I can see land above the water right now on both sides. I don't know, maybe 50 feet off the boat. So one thing about the Bob 423 tracks is that he does a really good job of keeping the waterway guides alerts on Aquamaps up to date. And he says there should be, if I stay on his track, there should be 6.1 feet of water. That's as of almost 2 months ago, though. So it could be a very different scenario. Yeah, this section has not been a problem for us on our other 2 trips because it had just been dredged, so. And we're through! Woohoo!
We made it!
We made it! Oh, that's exciting. And now, I think we can sail! This is my no engine dance.
Kilkenny Creek anchorage is a little bit off the ICW, but it is so worth it. There's a cute little town and one of our favorite restaurants on the ICW, aptly named for the turnoff to the creek, Marker 107.
So we had a nice dinner last night at the Marker 107 restaurant and a good night's sleep in Kilkenny Creek. Now we're underway again, headed to Fort Frederica. It's a pretty long day, around 50-ish miles. There's two reasons we're doing a long day. One, we need to get to St. Augustine for Christmas. And then the second reason is that there's not a whole lot of dog-friendly anchorages. There's a lot of anchorages in Georgia, but the dog-friendly ones with shore access are few and far between. Most are just like offshoots, creeks offshoots off the ICW. Really nice anchorage near a national park. The only note to make about that anchorage is that the dinghy dock goes dry 2 hours before and 2 hours after low tide. So navigationally, there's two challenges today. The first one is some pretty major shoaling on Little Mud River. As of October 2021, it was reported to be 5.4 feet. It's December now, so hopefully it hasn't shoaled in anymore because we're going to get there at low tide. And low tide today is positive 1/2 foot, so like 6 or 8 inches. So we should be good as long as it hasn't shoaled too much further. And then the second item is the sounds. If you get a strong east or west wind, you can really get some pretty nasty chop in those sounds, particularly with the current versus the wind. We did it last year in 30 knots of wind, and it was quite sporty, to say the least. But today it's only forecasted 5 to 10 knots, so it should be a nice, beautiful day on the ICW. We're getting close to the really shallow spot at the Little Mud River. and we have about like 1.3 feet at the current moment, like at the tide station right next to it, and it's supposed to drop down to a minimum of 0.8 feet. So we should be all right. We should be all right. But the other unknown is that there's now a dredge at the far end. So hopefully I can still use the deepest spot and we don't run aground trying to go around the dredge. Rubbing the bottom at 4.3 feet.
Oh shit.
Still moving.
The water deeper behind you.
Hey, it's the water deeper behind you. I'm pushing butt over you.
Yeah, stay close to the dredge and the pipeline. Stay close to the dredge and the pipeline.
Stay close to the pipeline.
Roger, stay close to the pipeline. Excel, we made it through. Thank you for your help. Happy holidays.
Jesus.
Hug the pipes. That's where we already did.
Hug the pipes.
This is also 1.7, this is 1.8.
Twice in 1 day. We're freaking wrecked today.
So we're aground, but not where we thought we were run aground. We have run aground on the entrance to our anchorage. We've done this.
We're trying to blow off.
We're starting to blow off because the tide's coming up. But quickly, we're aground. Wind, rising. We're on a rising tide, so we made us have to chill here for a little bit. So we do appear to be moving, so make it a little forward, see what happens.
Full send. Nope. Just kidding. We're not going.
Options are A, panic.
No.
We thought our running aground would be a good opportunity to talk about what your options are if you run aground.
Your options kind of depend like what the situation is. In this case, we are on mud in a rising tide in a very protected creek. So almost no danger to the boat unless we did something extremely stupid.
Yeah.
And like no danger to ourselves. So we have about 3 options presented to us at that point. The first of all is just simply waiting. It's protected creek. We could just wait for the tide to come up and just drive off, right?
Yeah, because the water will come up, you'll come up off the ground, and you just go, you're on your way.
And the second option is to kedge yourself off. So you take your bow anchor and you take it off to like a far point. And you want to like make sure you have like lots of scope. So you get lots of, like, what's the word?
Horizontal pull instead of vertical pull.
Oh, right. So put your anchor out pretty far into deep water and then use your anchor winch. Especially if it's a manual one, you're not going to overload it with like your electric winch on your bow. Or you can even take the rope and run it back to one of your sheet winches. This is something you can do as well. And then you use that to crank yourself off. You can also use that in conjunction with the first option of just waiting, taking the anchor, running it out to deep water and keeping it tight. That way when the tide comes up, you're not going to like move farther onto a shallow shoal or a sandbar, something like that. And then the third option is to reduce the draft of the boat. And on a monohull sailboat, you just do that by tipping it. And you can either do that by everyone standing on one side on a smaller boat, taking the boom out, hanging from the boom, or like taking your dinghy and hanging it off the back of the boom, just something to give it some leverage. Then the third option of that is just take a halyard from the top of the mast. This is one of the more extreme options that like you would probably only do if it was like falling tide and you were on rocks and you had
limited options and things were going to get scary.
Because you could break stuff. You take a halyard and you either run it out to an anchor or you take it to a big dinghy and you use that to heel you over and get yourself off. But in our case, in the video, we simply just waited, and once the tide came up a couple inches, the tides are 8 feet here, they're huge. So we just didn't have to wait very long.
Yeah, and we were also lucky that the wind was on our nose, so as we came off, the wind pushed us backwards off of the shoal instead of pushing us farther onto it, and we were able to kind of get out and move out and around, so easy enough.
Pretty effortless, that one.
Yeah. Your other option is to call a tow service, and when it comes to ICW travel, having Sea Tow or Boat Tow US are probably worth their weight in gold. We personally use Boat US's tow service, and that's because it pays for itself in fuel discounts and marina discounts and a West Marine discount. There's a lot of reasons we do it that way. It does pay for itself with the discounts over the course of a year. Obviously, if you run aground in a dangerous situation, you're going to have to think a little bit more clearly, and there is that possibility that you may need to actually remove yourself from the vessel. Personal safety comes before boat safety, so and property. You are worth more than your boat is, so just keep that in mind. Scenarios on the ICW are usually pretty
benign
and low-key, so you're unlikely to have to abandon ship if you run aground on the ICW. However, just make sure that you know what your plan is if it were to happen in your current situation when you're coming into shoals. Are we through? You think?
Fastest boat we ran aground.
It really has been a day. The winch side of the windlass, the hole that you stick the thing in to crank it in, has like moved itself down to the bottom. Now I gotta figure out how to get it out. Got it! After a crazy day like this one, it can be hard to remember why we're out here. But then we're reminded of the beautiful places we get to visit like Fort Frederica, and it all makes sense again. Probably the steer.